When we're talking about the future of work, the perfect person to speak to is Mitch Joel, who is all about decoding the future, whether it's through his podcast or speaking events. Hello, Mitch. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, and with the lack of speaking events, this makes it pretty easy to see you.
Well, we did something a little bit differently than we would typically do with an interview like this. We're actually going to interview each other, and so we prepared 3 questions each. I'm going to start, and I had a chance to go into the Mitch Joel Amber Mac archives, and I found an interview we did in 2013, and I'd asked you about your book, Control, Alt, Delete, and I asked you the question, how do you stay employable over the next 5 years? And I have the same question for you today in 2020 during COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that question, I thought maybe that's not a fair question to start with, Amber. Why are you going instead of a jab? You're just right hooking me. Look, I think ultimately what we're seeing right now is just this real digitization of everything. People are in it, they're using it, and they're there. And I think any opportunity to think that way still holds true. One of the great things about the book, I think at least, is that, while platforms might have changed, I think the sentiment rings even truer today than it did back then, because we are here, we're in this moment. We've got our elderly on Zoom and connected through FaceTime, and we've got the young kids all on screens all day, unfortunately, but for school, hopefully. So I just think that it is still that course of thinking digital first, thinking mobile first. It still rings true for me, and I think we're just all experiencing it right now. So for me, my follow-up to that was, can you talk a little bit about the influencer space and how the influencer changes in a world where all of us are now doing this and all of us are creating so much content? Do you think that influencers are still going to be as powerful? Do you think it's going to change?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think, unfortunately, when we talk about the word influencers, Kim Kardashian has kind of ruined it for everybody, because there are people who are influential, who are doing great work in the knowledge economy. And so I think what we're going to see over the next few months is those people who truly have influence, who have communities online, who can make an impact. Those people are really going to rise to the top, because as you know, and as we've all been doing lately, we're doing these live events. And at the end of the day, not everybody can do live. I mean, people can go do a photo shoot and make themselves look wonderful, but not everybody can do live video. And that's where I think there's going to be a widening in terms of the people who kind of rise to the top. And I think live video will be that differentiator. So the influencers, I think, during this time are those people who are helping to guide people through this crisis. And that's a different type of influence than maybe if I could sell you a new sweater. Mitch, we have lots of people who are like us, who are speaking at events, doing so virtually now, who write books, who do podcasts. We're all part of the knowledge economy. When we talk about the future of work, what does this look like when we have to be physically distant?
This is probably the million-dollar question that we're all struggling with. And for me, I don't know that we're going to get to the answer. And to a certain degree, what I keep saying is we have to hold sort of these two things in our heads at the same time. This one idea that things are going to be forever changed and different, and that this will pass and we will literally be in a place where we sort of look at this and go, wow, remember 2020? That was crazy. It was bizarre. And we're sort of back to normal. But I think within this, what we're seeing is that there are many different levels. Like, even as we record this, you've been doing TV and broadcast for so much longer than I have. You have your reps in, you've got the studio, you're looking great. The whole thing is set up. It's mic'd well. I'm fumbling through this. I'm trying to figure it out. While I've done digital communications for over a decade, this format and this type of broadcasting has really changed who I am and how we deliver. So I think it's more about just the mass amount of things we're going to be seeing produced and how we think about where the real value is, and also figuring out if it's a world where, when we switched from sort of print to digital, there was sort of this digital pennies idea, like digital is so free and fast flowing, that is there any value in that? And so I think we're going to have to figure that out. And speaking of that, I'm wondering what your perspective is on this. Like, as we see digital delivering, is it the same for you as physical? Like, live events to doing Facebook events are very different for me. Books to webinars, like, really different for me. So is this like the old days of print to digital, where the physical dollars are just going to be replaced with virtual pennies? Like, how do you see this rolling out?
I think honestly that's a question that all of us are asking right now, and I've been thinking about this a lot as we do more in this space in terms of online events. And what's happening right now is everybody is working for free in the digital space, and that can't last forever. And so I liken it in some ways to the early days of the app ecosystem. And I think of apps when they first came out, they were all free, and nobody thought anyone would ever pay for an app. That was ridiculous. These were just tiny little programs you would download on your phone. And what we've realized as the app ecosystem matured is that people would pay for that premium experience, but it's not $25, it's $1.99 or 99 cents. And I do believe that in terms of those physical experiences in the virtual space, they are going to be obviously less expensive for people to come to these virtual events. And then at the end of the day, what you really need is someone who is out there, who is speaking or doing any type of content, is that you need scale. Because you need scale, because if we know when Facebook turns on that switch where you can charge for a live event, you know you're not going to be charging $50, but you might be able to charge $5. And so I think that's where things become really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be about having the list and the people and the connections while this happens, and they want to stay with you for sure. It's a whole different landscape for sure.
It's a whole different landscape. Okay, so speaking about that whole different landscape, one of the pieces of that is so critical is the technology that all of us are using right now, or like you say, many people fumbling through trying new things, myself included. It's all about experimenting. And what I think is really interesting is that there's some technology that we're depending on more and more. So my question for you is, what tech do you think is going to be that technology that will accelerate or grow during this difficult time?
I think we've already seen it. It's become the #1 company in Canada. They've had massive growth. I'm very proud that I know the founders and friends with Harley Finkelstein, but I think Shopify is going to definitely be the one that we're going to see impact us all, from the sort of small local merchants to the medium size to the larger players. I think it's going to impact on the B2B side, on the B2C side. I think it's going to impact even those selling virtual products. I just think that we have really thought differently about what buying is versus what shopping is. And when I look at the technology landscape out there, I think Shopify has really positioned itself, along with their marketplace, with their shop app and other components of it, that really creates a vital connection between all of us and each other. And that idea of commerce, I really think is powerful. I've been talking about the idea of social commerce for over 10 years, but to really see the ability for a small local merchant to have the same ability to reach as an Amazon was a massive tectonic shift. And we're seeing it now in the sort of sub 15% of all commerce is e-commerce. And now in the past couple of months, it's been like 30% plus. Will it go back? Probably. But I still think that the impact of Shopify and what they're providing is going to be one of the technologies that we will always think about around this time. I'm curious, I throw it right back to you for my final question, which would be, what do you think is the technology that we're going to be sort of catering to in a world where we've all started using everything en masse?
Well, something I've been talking about for the past couple of years is artificial intelligence, and the adoption has been really slow, as I'm sure you know, and there's only been a few companies that have been able to successfully adopt artificial intelligence. But what we've seen, I think, during this crisis is that more of these companies are moving more quickly, and I'm thinking specifically about other countries. In Singapore is one example where they're currently using robot dogs powered by AI through parks to warn people about physically distancing, and computer vision so that they're able to see that you are in fact 6 feet apart. I'm thinking about the customer call centers where they were told that they can't be in these call centers stacked side by side, that are quickly adopting things like chatbots. So I think we're going to see that AI adoption is going to accelerate, and I think there are going to be those companies that successfully figure out how to adopt that technology, and then many others that get left behind. It's not a pretty scene, though, I think, when you talk about the future of work, because the disruption can be so difficult for so many people, and for many people in jobs that are going to be affected by that AI or automation as well.
And we're also going to see it impact cities. You think about people who had smaller condos or apartments because they were spending more time at work, who may now only work a couple of days a week or work remotely. I think they're going to move to areas where they have more space and land, and that's going to just impact everything we built over several decades to get to these sort of interesting infrastructures. So the whole dynamic of it, I think it is going to be impacted. And I think that the marriage of AI with this sort of Shopify commerce component of it is it's the perfect fit, which is appropriate because you and I sort of get along and often think alike. So that's great.
It's perfect. And I just wanted to thank you for joining me in this conversation. I have to say, one of the first times I saw you speak, it was a model for me in terms of saying, okay, you know what? I think I can do this. I understand this guy. I love his presentations. They're so engaging. One of the first videos I saw you show was the free hugs video from way back when. And you have always been at the forefront, really, in terms of figuring out the future. So before I let you go, I just want you to remind people where they can go to listen to your podcast, to read your email newsletter. Where can they find all things Mitch Joel?
Well, that's very kind of you, Amber. And you know it's always been a mutual admiration society. So watching your ascent in the broadcasting space and the speaking space, I dare say that you've lapped me in the speaking space. So very well done. You can find me always at 6pixels.com, and you can just sign up for everything, my weekly podcast, tons of articles and information. And hopefully soon in a hotel conference center. I'd love to see that happen again soon. So thanks again, Amber.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you soon.